Thank you all for joining us today. We're excited to have Mike Ewall join us, courtesy of Marianne and her endless connections in the world of sustainability and circularity. And I'm particularly excited because Mike represents a grassroots effort in advocacy and environmental justice in all of his efforts against dirty energy and waste facilities. Just at a bare minimum, there's a long list of exciting items in his resume. And so without further ado, I'll hand it over and to Mike to share screen and get started.
All right, thanks, Danielle. Let me get my screen share fired up. Okay, can everyone see that and hear me all right? Say thumbs up. Great. All right, so I'll just jump into it. So I know you got busy lives to get to. So my name is Mike Ewall. I live in Northeast Philadelphia, and I founded and run a group called Energy Justice Network, which is a national group. And we're a small one, and we help communities across the country. I'm working with folks in Hawaii and New England and Florida and Oregon, all over the place. Fighting dirty energy and waste industries, and also transitioning to clean alternatives, clean energy, zero waste, and other solutions. So let's talk about Delaware County for a minute. Some dots are missing on the map here. I actually want to share an action alert later once I can drop things in the chat to something we're petitioning right now, because there should be 2 more big red dots over the city of Chester. One of which is the trash incinerator that is the biggest air polluter, not just in Delaware County, but in the whole 7-county Philadelphia area now. But incinerators don't have to report to the toxic release inventory that EPA has, which maps like this are made from. But this, you can see that there's a trend in where industrial polluters are concentrated, and it overlaps quite a bit with where people of color live, particularly Black people in Delaware County in and around Chester. Now, I won't go into detail on this, but this is just a bit of an overview of the toxic tour that I give in Delaware County, where we go down the waterfront and discuss all the different toxic hazards that are there. And there are even more that are proposed on top of this. So it's a pretty bad situation there. And that situation has led to some really bad health outcomes. This child is in front of that trash incinerator I mentioned. And these are some older statistics from the 90s. It's been hard for us to even get our hands on newer health statistics down to the more local level. So I just keep this slide in here just to remind of how bad things have been for a while. But we'll talk about Philadelphia and the whole area in a moment as well with that. I also want to demonstrate that there are a lot of victories, and there are some newer ones I could add to this, but we're waiting for the big new ones and stopping Delaware County from burning its trash, which we're making progress on. We have 10% of their trash now bypassing their incinerator and going straight to the county's landfill, where the ash normally goes anyway. And that's on the path to having Delaware County have a whole zero waste plan and moving in the same direction that ultimately we need to get Philadelphia and other municipalities going as well. So there have been a lot of victories, but there's still a lot of problems left. Now, in Philadelphia, we're surrounded by the biggest trash incinerator cluster in the country. Whichever way the wind blows, there's probably a trash incinerator's air pollution hitting us, because literally we have 5 of them on different sides of the city. You can see in the little breakout there in the corner what that looks like. And 4 of those 5 are the largest air polluters in their counties. And all 5 of them are among the top 7 industrial air polluters in the 7-county Philadelphia area of Philly and all the counties that touch it. So this industry is on decline. We have been very successful at stopping new ones from being built. They've not managed to build a new one at a new site since 1995, despite hundreds of attempts around the country. And now they're kind of sliding into oblivion. 3 more closed last year. I was part of one of them, helping that end up closing. And we're looking at the fact that this industry is aging. More are closing every year, either because of their expense, because of fires, or other mishaps, or because of our activism. So my goal is to take out the remaining 68 in the next decade if I can, so I can move on with my life and help stop other bad industries. So I'd love your help with some of this. So when I looked at how badly this industry is aging, I found that there are 48 trash incinerators that closed since year 2000, and their average age when they closed was just 24 years old. Most of the ones that exist now are in their late 20s or even into their earlier mid 40s. Only 6 so far have made it past 40 though. And I already mentioned this last point, so move on. So in Philadelphia, we're the largest city in terms of, we're the most poor city of the large ones, I should say, in the country, the poorest large city. And we also have some of the worst health outcomes. We're in recent years, top 10, 3 years in a row, according to the rankings given by the Asthma and Allergy Foundation for the worst cities to live in. And actually, this is for the whole metro area in terms of asthma. And in terms of cancer, I'm not sure where we currently stand, so it's hard to get newer information on this. But when I last saw it analyzed, as far as big cities go, we were #1 in cancer incidence. And this was a little over 10 years ago. So I'm not sure if it's changed much since the refinery blew up and shut down in 2019. So hopefully those rankings are falling in our city, but still probably not terribly good. Now, where does our waste go? In Philadelphia, about 40% of our trash goes to incinerators, and those are the ones in red here. The main one where it goes is in Delaware County in the city of Chester, which is a textbook case of environmental racism. There have been lawsuits over that have gone all the way up to the US Supreme Court, and it's just notorious for being one of the worst cases of this in the country. So part of my mission is to stop Philadelphia from burning as trash, which we have a solution we'll get into in a minute. So this is a picture of that incinerator. You can see how close it is to people's homes. It's literally across the street, across the railroad tracks. You can just look out your window or sit on your porch and see the biggest trash burning plant in the country. 3,500 tons per day of trash from Philadelphia, from Delaware County, from New York City, New Jersey, and Ocean City, Maryland, and sometimes even as far as Puerto Rico and Oklahoma and Canada comes to this incinerator. Now, they're one of the biggest polluters in the county. Sometimes they're second to the oil refinery down the street in Traynor Borough, but in many cases, they're #1 in not just the county, but the whole area. And this is what they're putting out. They're putting out greenhouse gases, nitrogen oxides that trigger asthma, all kinds of other chemicals that trigger heart attacks, strokes, cancers, all sorts of things, including learning disabilities. And this is not even a complete list of chemicals or health effects released by that one facility. And all the other incinerators are doing the same thing, just in smaller numbers because they're not quite as big. When we looked at how much of an environmental violator they were, we found that they're the largest environmental criminal, you can say, in the city of Chester, about literally exactly twice as many violations since Covanta started operating that facility as the second largest environmental violator in terms of DEP violations. But they don't need to be in violation to be causing harm, because the permit limits do not mean that their emissions are healthy and safe. So even when they brag that they're within permit limits, that's no comfort, because there's no safe dose of a lot of the chemicals that come out. And the enforcement is very lax. They rarely test for most chemicals. There are only 4 chemicals they test on a continuous basis. And this company's even been known to rig their testing data, so we can't even trust what testing is taking place. Now, here is just where their trash is coming from. So you can see Philadelphia is a huge contributor, Delaware County also, one of the main contributors to where the waste is going to Chester, and that incinerator in particular. But if you're in other suburbs, a lot of folks in Montgomery County and Bucks County are feeding trash incinerators in Plymouth Township in Montgomery County or in Falls Township in Bucks County. Now, in Philadelphia, when we tried to stop this flow of waste from Philadelphia to Chester and to Plymouth and Montgomery County, we had 41 groups signed on opposing this contract that got signed in 2019. And it was a 4-year contract. And so that contract actually comes up for the first of 3 1-year renewal options this summer. And so we've been pushing more recently, and we're working again on building this back up to get the pressure on city council, on the mayor, on anyone who might soon become our new mayor or new city council members to commit to ensuring that Philadelphia does not continue to renew contracts to burn our waste. And I thought there's a different slide next. So this is just where you can find more information on incineration. I'll drop this into the chat in a minute. I'm gonna breeze through some of these because I don't have time to get into all the why incinerators are bad, but just some high level things. We know they're worse than coal power plants. They're much more polluting per unit of energy. We've crunched those numbers with EPA data. We also know that they're worse than using landfills directly. They don't replace landfills. They just make for smaller and more toxic landfills because the ash still ends up in landfills. So as a zero waste advocate, we recognize that zero waste means zero incineration and getting as close to zero as you can in terms of how much waste ends up in a landfill. Now, a lot of people will think, well, landfills are terrible, right? So shouldn't we use waste to energy, which is a PR term for a trash incinerator, not even an accurate one, because they don't really turn waste into energy. They're not violating the laws of physics. But when we did, and when I say that, I mean, they're not turning matter into energy without a nuclear reaction, and they don't thankfully do that. But when we last did a life cycle assessment, a new one is coming out very soon on the incinerator in Chester, but this is the most recent one we did for Montgomery County, Maryland, where the same company owns their trash incinerator, operates their trash incinerator, it's publicly owned. And you can see the MCRRF is the Montgomery County Resource Recovery Facility. And when we compare that to the composite of 10 landfills we analyzed, most of which in Pennsylvania, that they would send to, we found that the climate impacts were twice as bad as going direct to a landfill. That's in blue. And if you add in the health impacts from particulate matter that causes heart attacks and strokes, and the nitrogen oxides that contribute to smog and asthma attacks, and the toxic chemicals that contribute to birth defects and learning disabilities, that's the one in purple, and then all the other ones layered on top in terms of cancer and other impacts, we found that it was just over 3 times worse to go straight to an incinerator, even one that's close to home, in Montgomery County's case, and same will be true where we are, versus bringing it further to a landfill. Even if they have to travel hundreds of miles to get to a landfill, the transportation doesn't even come close to making up for it. And you can see that on this slide where from the same study, red is the incinerator, yellow is the landfills, and this is just the greenhouse gas impacts. You can see in blue the contribution of trucking for transportation, or in their case, they have rail access, and so that's the line in black. And you can see that the transportation contribution is only about 3% of the waste system. It is not the excuse to go closer to home when an incinerator is the facility that you're going to. Now, sometimes in Philadelphia, when I talk about this with city council members, they say, well, where would our waste go? They really are concerned about what do we do if we can't use an incinerator? Well, 60% of our trash already goes straight to landfills, but this is a map of the landfills in the region. You can see there's not really a shortage of them. Pennsylvania has been the largest importer of trash since at least the early 90s when they first started studying it. We take waste from every state except 6 of the states out west, Alaska, Hawaii, and a few others. Even waste from California, Puerto Rico, Bermuda, Virgin Islands, Canada, and other places get as far as Pennsylvania waste facilities. Now, let's come close to wrapping up on the environmental racism aspect of this. A lot of people have this impression that environmental racism just affects everyone or affects all industries equally, that landfilling is going to be just as bad, but that's actually not the case. This is a little confusing to absorb at first, but this is from our environmental justice analyzer, where anything with a race ratio of more than 1 means that a group is disproportionately impacted. And you can see this at all the different distances out to 250 miles. the trash incinerators in Pennsylvania are disproportionately impacting people of color, particularly Black people in the state. And you can see that their household income on average within a mile is about 46,000. Let's contrast that to trash incinerators, or sorry, to landfills in Pennsylvania. You can see the household income is far higher, and that it's actually disproportionately impacting white people, like more than if it were equally distributed. So this notion that somehow it's all the same and all bad facilities are impacting people of color more, not the case in Pennsylvania, not the case in these industries on a national basis either. And the landfills are in much more rural areas. So if you compare using the Chester trash incinerator and how many people are impacted by that versus where the ash goes when Delaware County or Philadelphia trash goes there first, and then the ash ends up in the Delaware County landfill, which is actually in Berks County. You can see 10 times more people impacted by the incinerator than the rural landfill. So if we're just worrying about impacting any people, the more responsible thing to do would be not use incinerators, especially the most urban one we have available to us. So last few things on zero waste. Zero waste is defined to exclude incineration. And this here is the zero waste hierarchy that I actually developed, that's now used as an international standard for what zero waste means. That's very clear in the definition and the hierarchy that the backstop is landfilling, which is the orange layer, that incineration of any sort is considered forbidden in a zero waste system. But obviously all the forward thinking things like what you do in your work and redesigning things come first, and that helps us reduce waste from even ending up in a landfill. So one of the problems here in Philadelphia is that recycling doesn't even end up in recycling trucks. I've been documenting for about 2 years now, every week, with rare exceptions, they dump the recycling and trash in the same truck on my block. And I know this is happening in other parts of Philadelphia. I hear about it from people, and I'm encouraging people to collect videos of this as well, or even just document it with pictures or any other way you can, so we can build the case, because Philadelphia denies that this is still happening. They've been lying to the media, to their own advisory committee, and to the public for over a year at this point, saying, oh, the problem is solved, don't worry. And here we see it's still happening on a weekly basis in certain neighborhoods. So I'm looking for help documenting this is the case, because they insist that they have no record keeping on whether they even sent out a recycling truck on a given route on a given week, which is hard to believe. But I just finished up a right to know battle for over a year with the city, and they've been putting in an affidavit that they have no records to document this, which I still find hard to believe. I'm told that's a lie, but they've went on record saying no. This is the one I should have had a little bit earlier. These are in the highlighted states are the only ones that are not sending waste to Pennsylvania, since the state started collecting data on this. So as far as the contract I mentioned is coming up for renewal in Philadelphia this summer, about a third of our waste is going to Covanta, which is the incinerator company that runs 3 of the 5 incinerators surrounding the city. And the other 2/3 goes to waste management. Some of that ends up in incinerators too, but most of it is going to landfills. So we're primarily focused on the Covanta contract, but we would like to get a law passed in the city that makes it illegal to renew contracts or to sign new ones to burn our trash or recyclables or compostables, since the city has chosen a few years ago, for half a year, they actually deliberately contracted to burn half the city's recyclables directly, because they didn't want to pay the price of a recycling contract at the time. This is a copy of a bill I wrote called the Waste Contracting for Clean Air Act that we're working to get introduced in City Council. So we can use everyone's help in pushing City Council on that. And to wrap up here, this is a link I'm going to drop in the chat. So I would love to stay in touch with a lot of you. If you want to get involved in any way, I encourage you to fill out this form if you would, right away, just so you're not forgetting and maybe not do it later. Just fill this out, and then I'll be able to stay in touch with you, let you know what actions we're doing in terms of City Council, in terms of documenting problems in neighborhoods, or if you're not in the city, but in a suburban area and your waste may be going to an incinerator, there are things that we're looking for help there as well. So I'll drop my information into the chat as well, so I can stop screen sharing. There we go.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Fast. I was trying to stay in the time limit here.